This is a true story of a woman who dedicated her whole life to her family, raised her son with love, cherished her grandson, only to be betrayed by the one she loved most. Her grandson, whom she nurtured with all her heart, tried to steal her home, her belongings, and her dignity. How did she find the strength to fight back? How did she protect herself from betrayal? My dear, your feedback means so much to me. Please let me know where you're watching from and whether you enjoyed this story. It's truly, truly important to me. Thank you so much.
I never thought I'd be one of those old women who sits alone at her kitchen table, wondering where she went wrong. But here I am, staring out the window at a world that doesn't care, asking myself that same terrible question over and over. How did my sweet grandson turn into a monster? It's strange, the things your mind clings to when your heart is breaking. I remember the pattern on the kitchen curtains, tiny sunflowers, faded from years of sunlight. I remember the hum of the old refrigerator, the way the linoleum floor creaked under my feet. And I remember the cup of tea I tried to drink that morning. My hand shook so badly I spilled half of it down my sweater. My name is Loretta Mae Simmons, 72 years old, widow, mother, grandmother, and until recently, I thought I'd done all right by my family. I thought I'd raised a good man, my son, David. I thought I'd helped raise a kind boy, my grandson, Marcus. But I was wrong. Lord, how wrong I was. It started on a Thursday, the kind of cold, gray day that makes your bones ache. Marcus had come by to check on me, at least that's what he said. He kissed me on the cheek, called me Grams, smiled that sweet smile that used to melt my heart when he was little. But there was something in his eyes that didn't match the smile, something hard, something cold. He sat at the table, drumming his fingers on the wood, glancing at the clock every few minutes. I offered him sweet tea, his favorite since he was a boy, but he waved it off, said he was in a hurry. "I need you to sign something for me, Grams," he said. His voice, so soft, so polite on the surface, but underneath, it had a sharp edge I never heard before. I blinked at him. "What is it, baby?" "Just some papers, something for school," he said too quickly, sliding them across the table toward me. The pages trembled in my old hands. I didn't have my glasses, so I couldn't make out the words. The print was small, too small. I squinted, tried to focus, but all I saw were lines and lines of tiny letters. "Let me get my glasses, sugar," I said, pushing back my chair. But he put a hand on mine, firm, too firm. "No need, Grams. It's nothing. Just a permission slip, really. Just sign at the bottom." I looked at him then, really looked at him. The boy I used to rock to sleep, whose hair I'd brushed back from his forehead after bad dreams, whose little hand had clutched mine on the first day of school, that boy was gone. Sitting in his place was a young man I barely recognized. And in that moment, the first flicker of fear lit inside me, a small, cold flame that would soon become a roaring fire. I smiled, trying to hide the shaking in my voice. "Let me get my glasses, Marcus. I always read what I sign. You know that." His jaw tightened. His eyes, dark and unreadable, met mine, and for the briefest moment, I saw it. The truth, the anger, the calculation, the contempt. Then it was gone, replaced by that same practiced smile. "Sure, Grams, sure." I went to the living room, my legs unsteady, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum. I found my glasses where I'd left them on the end table and slipped them on, drawing a deep breath to steady myself. When I returned to the kitchen, the papers were gone. Marcus stood by the door, his hands in his pockets, his smile fixed in place. "Change my mind," he said lightly. "I'll come back another time." Before I could answer, he was out the door, down the steps, into his car, and gone. I stood there, the silence of the house pressing down on me like a heavy quilt. My hand shook. My knees felt weak. I sank into the nearest chair and stared at the empty table. That was the beginning, the first sign. But I didn't want to see it. I told myself I was imagining things, that Marcus was just stressed, just growing up. I wanted to believe the best. That was my first mistake. In the days that followed, I tried to put it out of my mind, but the unease stayed with me, creeping into my thoughts when I lay awake at night, whispering in my ear when I tried to pray. And then came the phone calls from the bank, from people I didn't know, about accounts I hadn't touched, about loans I hadn't taken, about papers I hadn't signed. That's when the pieces started falling into place. And that's when I realized my grandson wasn't the boy I thought he was. If only I had trusted that first flicker of fear, if only I had seen what was right in front of me. But by the time I understood the truth, it was too late.
What I uncovered next would not only break my heart, it would put everything I'd built, everything I'd loved, in danger. You won't believe what he did. It's funny, in a bitter sort of way, how fast a life's work can unravel. I gave everything I had to my family, my love, my strength, my sacrifices, and it took just a few days for it all to start slipping through my fingers like sand. After that visit from Marcus, my world changed. Slowly at first. So slow I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. But the signs were there, plain as day. I just didn't want to see them. It started with the calls. The first came on a Monday morning. I was sitting on the porch, wrapped in my old shawl, watching the sun rise over the neighbor's magnolia tree. The air smelled of dew and earth, and for a moment I almost forgot the unease that had settled over me since Marcus's visit. Then the phone rang. "Mrs. Simmons?" a crisp voice asked when I answered. "Yes, this is she." "This is Charles from First Southern Bank. I'm calling to confirm the refinancing paperwork we received this morning. I just need to verify a few details." My heart stopped. "Refinancing? I don't know what you're talking about." A pause, papers rustling. "It appears your signature is on the documents, ma'am. Are you saying you didn't submit this?" I felt the blood drain from my face. My knees went weak, and I sank onto the chair by the phone. "No, sir, I did not." He hesitated. "I see. Well, perhaps you should come down to the branch to review this in person. We can put a hold on the process for now." I hung up, my hand trembling so badly I could barely set the receiver back on the hook. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, a mix-up, but deep down I knew. I knew because I'd seen that glint in Marcus's eyes, that mask he wore when he sat in my kitchen. I knew because a grandmother's heart doesn't lie, not when it comes to her own blood. The next call came 2 days later, this time from a lawyer's office. They wanted to confirm my intentions regarding the transfer of my property, my home, the house Walter and I had built with our own hands, brick by brick, back when we were young and full of dreams. The house I'd planned to leave to David. The house Marcus was now trying to steal out from under me. And still part of me wanted to believe there was some other explanation, that this wasn't what it seemed, that my grandson wasn't capable of something so cruel. But oh, how I underestimated the darkness in his heart. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, listening to the house creak and settle around me, every sound magnified by my racing mind. I thought about the first time I'd held Marcus in my arms, just minutes after he was born, the way his tiny fingers had curled around my own, the way I'd whispered promises into his soft little ear, that I'd always protect him, always guide him, always love him. And now here I was, needing protection from him. Morning couldn't come fast enough. As soon as the sun rose, I dressed and walked down to the bank. My knees protested with every step, but I pushed on, clutching my purse like it contained all my remaining strength. At the bank, the young man behind the desk looked at me with pity when I explained why I was there. He showed me the paperwork. There was my name, my signature, neat as could be, but it wasn't mine. I stared at it until the lines blurred. "I didn't sign this," I whispered. He nodded, like he'd heard it before. Too many times. "We'll open an investigation, ma'am, and we'll freeze the process for now. But it would be wise to involve the authorities." The authorities. The police. The word tasted bitter. The thought of bringing outsiders into our family's shame made my stomach churn. But what choice did I have? I walked home slowly, every step heavier than the last. The neighborhood looked the same, kids playing ball in the street, Mrs. Jenkins watering her roses, Mr. Ellis sweeping his porch. But to me, everything felt different, like the world had shifted and I was the only one who noticed. When I got home, I sat in Walter's old chair by the window, the one that still smelled faintly of his aftershave, and I let the tears come. That's when I realized this wasn't just about paperwork. This was about trust, about betrayal, about the crumbling of everything I'd built and believed in, and it was just the beginning. The next time Marcus came by, I was ready. Or at least I told myself I was. He came in with that same smile, that same easy charm. But I saw through it now. I saw the cold calculation in his eyes, the greed, the entitlement.
"Hey, Grams," he said, dropping onto the couch like he owned the place. "How's my favorite lady?" I didn't answer right away. I just watched him, trying to find the boy I loved in the face of the man he'd become. But he wasn't there. "Marcus," I said quietly, "why are you doing this?" His smile faltered, just for a second. Then it was back, bright and false. "Doing what, Grams? What are you talking about?" "You know what I mean. The bank, the papers, the lies." He shrugged, like it was nothing, like it was all a game. "I'm just trying to help, Grams. You're getting older. Things get complicated. I'm just trying to make sure everything's taken care of." I felt my hands clench into fists in my lap. "By stealing from me?" His eyes darkened. The smile slipped away completely. "It's not stealing if it's mine anyway. It's gonna be mine one day. Why not now?" And there it was, the truth laid bare, the rot at the core of the boy I'd loved. If you think heartbreak can't come twice from the same person, you've never had to look into the eyes of your own grandchild and see a stranger staring back. But Marcus wasn't finished, not by a long shot. What he did next would tear what was left of our family apart. Stay with me. You won't want to miss what came after. If someone had told me, even a year ago, that my own flesh and blood would bring me so low, I'd have called them a liar. But betrayal? Real betrayal? It doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the ones you trusted most. And that's what makes it hurt in a way nothing else can. Marcus's words echoed in my mind long after he left that day. It's gonna be mine anyway. Why not now? The sheer audacity of it, the coldness, the certainty. I sat there in Walter's chair, my hands trembling,
my heart heavy with a grief deeper than any I'd known. I wanted to believe this was a phase, a mistake, something we could fix with a good hard talk, or maybe a prayer or two. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't just a young man lost on his path. This was someone who'd chosen his path, and it led straight through me. The calls kept coming, the bank, the lawyer, even a real estate agent, asking if I'd reconsidered my decision to sell the house, sell my home, the place where I rocked David to sleep, where Marcus had taken his first steps, where Walter's laughter still seemed to linger in the walls. I started keeping a notebook. Every call, every letter, every little sign that my world was crumbling, I wrote it all down. I thought maybe if I could see it in black and white, it would make sense. But all it did was break my heart over and over. One night, I heard a noise outside, a car pulling up, doors closing softly. I peeked through the curtains and saw Marcus, standing by the porch with two men I didn't recognize. They talked in low voices, glancing at the house like it already belonged to them. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I went to see David. I hadn't wanted to. I'd been too ashamed, too heartbroken. But now, I had no choice. He opened the door with a smile that faded as soon as he saw my face. "Mama, what's wrong?" I didn't answer. I just walked past him, into the house, into the kitchen where so many of our family conversations had taken place over the years. I sank into a chair and looked at him. Really looked at him. The man I'd raised. The boy I kissed scraped knees and wiped away tears for. The man who now stood there, looking at me, with concern, and maybe a hint of guilt. "Do you know what your son is doing?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. David sat down across from me, rubbing his face with his hands. "Mama, it's complicated." "No," I said, my voice stronger now. "It's not complicated. He's trying to take my home. He's forging my name. He's lying. And you're letting him." He looked up at me then, eyes red-rimmed, tired. "What do you want me to do? He's my son. I can't just... I don't know how to stop him." That broke something in me. You can't or you won't. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. And that's when I realized I wasn't just fighting Marcus. I was fighting the weakness in my son, the silence that let the rot take hold. I was alone. I stood, my legs unsteady, but my resolve firm. Then I'll stop him. I don't know how yet, but I will. David didn't try to stop me as I walked out. Maybe he knew there was nothing he could say. The days that followed were a blur of meetings, bank officers, lawyers, even the police, filing reports, giving statements, trying to untangle the mess Marcus had made. And Marcus? He kept coming by, kept trying to charm me, kept trying to talk circles around me, to convince me I was imagining things, that he only wanted what was best. But I saw through him now. Every word, every smile, it all rang hollow. Then came the final blow. One afternoon, I came home to find the front door unlocked. My heart leapt into my throat. I stepped inside, calling out, but the house was silent, too silent. I walked through the rooms, and that's when I saw it. The safe in my bedroom, the one where I kept Walter's watch, some family jewelry, important papers. It was open, empty. I sank to the floor, the weight of it all pressing down on me until I could barely breathe. And in that moment, I knew there was no going back. Marcus had crossed the line no child, no grandchild ever should. And I had to do what I never thought I'd do. I had to protect myself from my own blood. What I did next would change everything. And not just for me. When a grandmother fights back, there's no telling how far she'll go. Don't miss what happened when I decided enough was enough. They say a mother's love is endless. Maybe that's true. But a grandmother's love, it's different. It's gentler, quieter. And sometimes it's what makes the fight even harder. Because when your own blood turns on you, that love becomes a battlefield. And you have to choose, protect your heart or protect yourself. That night, after finding the safe empty, I didn't cry. Not this time. The tears had dried up, burned away by something fiercer. Something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Resolve. I stood in that quiet room, the ghosts of my past swirling around me. Walter's smile, David's little boy laugh, Marcus's baby giggles. And I made a promise to myself. This ends now. I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where Marcus had tried to trick me. And I wrote. I wrote down everything. The calls, the visits, the lies, the theft. I gathered every paper, every letter, every scrap of evidence. By dawn, I had a stack of truth so tall, even Marcus couldn't talk his way out of it. Then I picked up the phone. I called the police. It was the hardest call I ever made. My hand shook as I dialed. My voice cracked as I explained. But I did it. Because love doesn't mean letting someone ruin you. Love means doing what's right, even when it breaks your heart. The officer who came was kind, young enough to be my grandson himself. He listened, nodded, took notes. He looked at me with sympathy, but not pity. That mattered more than I can say.
"We'll open an investigation, Mrs. Simmons," he said gently. "You did the right thing." Did I? God help me, I wasn't sure. But it was done. And that's the thing about standing up for yourself. It changes you. It hardens parts of you that used to be soft. It draws lines where there used to be open doors. And once you draw those lines, you can't erase them. The news spread fast. Small town, you know how it is. Whispers at the grocery store, looks at church. Some folks called to offer support. Others crossed the street to avoid me, like standing up to your own family was something shameful. And Marcus? He came storming over 2 days later. He didn't knock, just barged in like he still had the right. "What the hell, Grams?" he barked, slamming the door behind him. "You called the cops on me? Your own grandson?" I stood my ground. My heart pounded, but my voice stayed steady. Yes, I did. He stared at me like he couldn't believe it, like I was the one who'd betrayed him. "You're losing it, Grams," he hissed. "You don't know what you're doing. You're ruining everything." "No, Marcus," I said softly. "You did that." His face twisted with anger. For a moment, I wondered if he might actually hurt me. But then he laughed, a harsh, bitter sound, and shook his head. "You'll regret this. You think they'll help you? You think anyone cares about some old woman in a crumbling house?" And just like that, he was gone. But his words stayed behind, like a stain I couldn't scrub out. That night, I checked every lock, every window. I even dragged a chair under the doorknob like I was a young mother again, trying to keep the world out. But fear, once it takes root, grows like ivy. And I realized I couldn't do this alone anymore. I needed help. The next morning, I called an old friend, Ruth. We'd grown up together, sat side by side in church, buried our husbands within a year of each other. I hadn't told her much, not yet, but now I poured it all out. She listened. She cried with me, and then she said the words that started to heal the cracks in my soul.
"You're not alone, Loretta. I'm here. We'll fight this together." And so we did. Together we found a lawyer who knew how to deal with cases like mine. Together we gathered more evidence, talked to more people, built a wall of truth so strong Marcus couldn't tear it down. But Marcus wasn't done fighting, and neither was I. The storm wasn't over, not yet. The hardest part was still to come. What Marcus did next would test the limits of my strength and my faith. Don't miss how far he was willing to go and what I had to do to stop him.
The days that followed felt like walking a tightrope over a canyon. Every morning I woke up wondering, what now? What will he try next? And Marcus didn't disappoint. It started small. Late-night phone calls, silence on the other end, or heavy breathing, or sometimes just that click of someone hanging up. Then the mailbox vandalized, letters torn, bills shredded. My garden, my pride and joy, trampled one morning like some wild animal had run through it. But I knew better. This was no animal. This was my grandson's anger taking root and spreading like a weed. I went to the police again, filed reports. They promised to keep an eye out, to patrol the neighborhood more often. But what could they really do? I felt trapped in my own home, in my own life. Ruth stayed close. She came by every day, bringing food, sitting with me while I tried to steady my shaking hands enough to write in my notebook. Together, we made plans, legal, practical, protective. I changed the locks, installed the security camera Ruth's nephew brought over. I did everything I could think of. But fear has a way of finding cracks, slipping through no matter how tight you seal the doors. One night, one of those heavy, humid nights when even the air feels thick with dread, I woke to the sound of breaking glass. My heart leapt to my throat. I grabbed the phone with one hand and the baseball bat Walter had kept under the bed with the other. I crept down the hall, every creak of the floorboards loud as thunder in my ears. And there he was, Marcus, standing in my living room, shards of window on the floor at his feet, his face twisted in fury. "Marcus, stop!" I shouted, my voice shaking. "You don't have to do this." But he wasn't listening. His eyes, those beautiful brown eyes I'd loved since the day he was born, were wild, empty. "This is my house. You're just squatting in it. It should have been mine already." "Get out, Marcus, please." He took a step toward me. I raised the bat, my hands trembling so badly I could barely keep hold of it. And then the sirens wailed. Red and blue lights painted the walls. Tires screeched outside. Marcus froze. I don't know if it was the sound of the law or the sight of me, old, frail, but ready to fight him with everything I had, that made him stop. But he did. He ran, out the door, into the night, swallowed by the darkness. And that's when I realized I wasn't just protecting my house anymore. I was fighting for my soul, for my dignity, for the right to live out my days in peace. The police found him a few blocks away, drunk, angry, rambling about how I betrayed him, how the house was his birthright. They arrested him. I pressed charges. My hand didn't shake when I signed the papers this time. My heart still ached. Oh, Lord, how it ached. But I knew I'd done the right thing. In the weeks that followed, things began to quiet down. The house felt safer. I felt safer. Ruth stayed close. Neighbors started to come around again, bringing casseroles and kind words. But I knew the real healing would take longer.
And I knew Marcus's absence didn't erase the pain. Because betrayal like that, it doesn't just steal your peace, it steals your sense of the world, of family, of everything you thought was solid beneath your feet. And it leaves you standing on shaky ground, trying to find your balance again. But just when I thought it was over, a letter arrived that changed everything again. What it said, I still can't believe it. Don't miss what came next. They say storms pass, that the sky clears, the sun returns, and life moves on, but no one tells you about the wreckage left behind, the broken fences, the flooded fields, the quiet grief. That's what I was living in, the aftermath. Or so I thought, until that letter arrived and showed me the storm wasn't over at all. It came on a Thursday, a plain white envelope, no return address, just my name, written in a shaky hand that made my heart thump with dread the moment I saw it. I sat at the kitchen table, turning it over in my hands, the paper soft from being handled too much. For a long time, I couldn't bring myself to open it. I just stared at it, as if somehow I could will it to vanish. But of course it didn't. So I took a deep breath, reached for my letter opener, the one Walter had given me on our 10th anniversary, silver with our initials engraved on the handle, and I slit the envelope open. The letter inside was short, just a few lines that felt like a knife to my heart. Grandma, you may think you've won, but this isn't over. You owe me. You owe me everything, and I'll be back one way or another. I sat frozen, the words burning into my mind. The neat kitchen, the sunshine spilling through the window, the tick-tick of the clock on the wall. All of it felt unreal, like I'd stepped into a nightmare I couldn't wake from. And that's when I realized the real battle hadn't been about the house or the money. It was about control, about power, about a boy I'd loved with all my heart who had grown into a man who saw me not as his grandmother, but as an obstacle. I folded the letter carefully, set it on the table, and stared out the window at the garden I'd tried so hard to save. The roses were blooming, wild and red and defiant. I felt a kinship with them then. Ruth came by that afternoon. She took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. "What is it, Loretta?" she asked, setting down the peach cobbler she'd brought. I handed her the letter. She read it, her mouth tightening, her eyes flashing with anger. "That boy has lost his mind," she said, voice low and fierce. "But you don't have to face this alone. We'll go back to the police. We'll get a restraining order if we have to." I nodded. My voice felt far away, like it belonged to someone else. "Yes, we will." And so we did. The officers took the letter seriously. They promised to increase patrols, to keep an eye out. The lawyer filed the paperwork for the order. I felt not safe exactly, but stronger, like I wasn't standing on that shaky ground all by myself anymore. But even as we did all the right things, a part of me mourned. I mourned the boy I'd loved, the future I'd dreamed of, where we'd sit together on this porch watching his children play. That dream was gone now, blown away like dust. The days turned into weeks. Slowly the tension began to ease. I started sleeping again, though the nights were still long and the house still felt too big, too empty. I tended my garden. I baked for the church bake sale. I tried to stitch my life back together, one quiet act at a time. But every creak of the floorboards, every knock at the door, every unexpected phone call made my heart leap. That's what fear does.
It lingers. It stains. Then one evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and gold, Ruth and I sat on the porch, sipping sweet tea, trying to find some peace in the beauty of the world. "Loretta," she said softly, "you've done all you can. Sometimes all that's left is to pray and to live, really live. Don't let him take that from you, too." I squeezed her hand. "I'll try, Ruth. I'll try." Because in the end, that's what I had left. My faith, my friends, my home, and the knowledge that I'd fought for them with everything I had. But peace, I learned, can be fragile. What happened next would test my courage one last time. Don't miss the final chapter of this story. You never expect the final act of a tragedy to come quietly. You imagine storms, shouting, doors slamming. But sometimes the end slips in on silent feet, changing everything in a single breath, leaving you to pick up the pieces in the hush that follows. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of day that gives no warning. The air was warm, the sky clear, the garden heavy with the sweet scent of jasmine. I'd just finished hanging laundry on the line when the doorbell rang. I froze. After all these weeks, every unexpected sound sent a jolt through me. I wiped my hands on my apron, steadied my breath, and went to the door. It wasn't Marcus. It was an officer, a young woman this time, her face kind but solemn. "Mrs. Simmons?" she asked. "Yes," I said, my heart already sinking. "I'm sorry to bother you. May I come in?" She stepped inside, and I knew, before she said a word, I knew. "There was an incident last night. Your grandson, Marcus, he was involved in an altercation. Things got out of hand. I'm so sorry. He didn't make it." Her words seemed to come from far away, muffled like I was underwater. I sank into a chair. My hands gripped the arm so tightly my knuckles went white. Marcus, gone. Just like that. And in that moment, every memory came flooding back. His first birthday, his laughter in the yard, the way he'd run to me after falling, his little face crumpled in tears, and then the man he'd become, the choices he'd made, the pain he'd caused. The officer stayed a while, offering what comfort she could, but really, there were no words. After she left, I sat in the stillness of the house, listening to the soft tick of the clock, the distant chirp of birds, the sigh of the breeze through the curtains. I wept then, for Marcus, for the boy he'd been, for the man he never got the chance to be, for all the ways we'd failed each other. Ruth came, of course, held me while I cried, sat with me through the long, silent hours. The days that followed were a blur. There was a funeral, simple and small. Few came. The town had heard the stories. People didn't know what to say, how to look me in the eye. David stood beside me at the graveside, his face pale, his shoulders stooped. We didn't speak much. There weren't words for this kind of sorrow. I kept asking myself, where did we go wrong? What could I have done differently? But the truth is, sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes, despite all you give, all you sacrifice, people make their own choices, and those choices lead them down dark roads. In time, the house grew quiet again, the garden bloomed, the seasons turned. I found small comforts in the warmth of the sun, in Ruth's steady friendship, in the memories of better days. And I learned to forgive, not because Marcus deserved it, but because I deserved peace. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: love fiercely, but wisely. Protect what you've built, and when the storm comes, and it will, stand tall even when your heart is breaking, because in the end, all we have is what we stood for. This was my story. A story of love, loss, and the strength I didn't know I had. If you've stayed with me this far, thank you. And remember, sometimes surviving is the greatest victory of all.